Okay, it is now post time. Welcome to the very first Burgers with Billy. We're working on a theme song and a video that Miley Cyrus is doing for us. No, I'm not. No. Okay, I do. Okay. This thing started as at a meeting between Steve Fader of the Catholic Sports Network. Steve in the back, stand up, Steve, and Bill Musselman of KT's right over here. And what we want to do is get together once a month, a group of sports fans, sports people, for just a low-key, entertaining evening of sports talk and chatter. And anybody here in the audience is welcome to offer their opinions, even you, Claudia Driesbach. But it's just going to be a fun thing, and it's for a very good cause, and that is the Bill Musselman Retirement Fund. So I'm going to just kind of run this thing like it's a quarterback club type thing. We have some special guests here tonight that we're going to ask to kind of analyze Saturday's game a little bit, and they'll be glad to take questions. And if you have any questions for me about anything, we're just here to have a good time and talk sports. So having said that, I hope everybody's getting their food orders taken here. I'd like to ask my first guest to step up. He came all the way up here from Frankfurt today, where he works for the Kentucky National Guard. A former quarterback from the University of Kentucky, Freddie Maggard.
Sir?
Freddie, is that thing on?
It is.
Okay. Why don't you just tell them a little bit about your career, Freddie, how you got to UK and who you played for?
All right, I grew up just about every coal camp in southeastern Kentucky, so I moved around a lot. Son of a coal miner. Got recruited by a bunch of schools. So actually got drafted by Kansas City Royals to play baseball. And didn't consider it because I was born with the UK pacifier in the crib, and I thought it was my responsibility, since I was from Kentucky, to play for the state university. If I had that chance, and I did, and got to play for Jerry Claiborne. Little story about Coach Claiborne. On my recruiting visit, you know, he schedules on Sunday the recruits, I guess in order of who he thinks to commit. So I was the last one scheduled on Sunday on my official visit. So I get my visit and with Coach Claiborne one-on-one, and he's like, okay, I want you to commit to UK. Because I know you want to play for Kentucky. And I said, I do, but I want to see how this baseball draft thing works out. And, you know, I just can't commit, Coach. Okay. So I jump in my 1974 LTD Supreme, about as big as this restaurant, and drive back to Cumberland, Kentucky. You know, I got about to Richmond. I look behind me, Jerry Claiborne's following me. So he followed me all the way back home. That's before cell phones now. And I pull up in my driveway, and I look down there at the bottom of the hill, and he'd already called my mother. So everybody's been recruited knows with Mama, it is what it is. So Coach Claiborne comes in, has our official visit. He says not one word to me in 2 hours. It's all everything to my mother. So 2 hours and 1 minute later, I'm a Wildcat. Not one word about football. It was all about church, about school, and becoming a young man at UK. So that's my Jerry Claiborne story. I was Coach Claiborne's last quarterback and Coach Curry's first. So I left the UK in '91.
Jerry Claiborne was one of my favorite people. He wasn't a colorful guy. He wasn't a great interviewer, but he was just as solid as they come, and he had the right values. And I thought he really didn't get as much credit as he deserved.
I think if in today's environment, UK's got that 12th game that they didn't have, and all the bowl games that are today. I think if he had that 12th,
he could schedule another game,
right,
sure.
Right, and with all the bowl games, I think he would be thought of a lot differently. But you won't find one player that completed their eligibility or did not complete their eligibility for him to say a bad word. He was just a great man and focused on values of your faith, your education, your family. Knew everybody's family members by name, and it was just an honor to play for him.
What Freddie and you all feel free here in a minute to ask any questions, but one thing I'm wondering is, I'm one of those people, I thought when Kentucky hired Bill Curry away from Alabama, this was every bit as good a hire as Rick Pitino. And it just didn't happen. Can you tell us give us a little insight into both, into Coach Curry mainly as a coach?
I really like Bill Curry as a man. He was again, a man of faith, education, morals, and values. Coach Curry was more of an administrator or a CEO of the team, and didn't really get into the X and O's like Coach Claiborne. So it was a pretty big transition, even for me, to go. But he didn't get off on an early good recruiting start, and I think once you have to start catching up from recruiting classes that aren't at a high level, you can never do that. So I think that got to him, and also he had a large amount of turnover in the staff, and I think that also hurt him. I know when he first got to UK, we had Tommy Bowden, who was our offensive coordinator, went on to be the head coach at Clemson and some others, and just had a large, rapid turnover in offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators, and I don't think he really settled into the job.
Freddie's daddy, also named Freddie, was a starter on Carr Creek's state championship team of 1953. And at the time that Carr Creek won that championship, the Commonwealth was still reeling from the fact that Paul Bear Bryant had left Kentucky to go to Texas A&M. And ever since then, Kentucky has been looking for the next Bear Bryant. They haven't found him. Now, is Mark Stoops the guy? From what you've seen of Coach Stoops, I mean, is this the guy that can get Kentucky back to where they're at least competitive in the SEC?
I think so. I really do. As far as being the next Bear Bryant,
that's pretty strong.
Yeah, those are huge shoes. But I think he's exactly the right fit for Kentucky. Perfect combination of hiring a defensive mind with a name that can recruit like he's recruiting, and also bring in Neil Brown as a coordinator to run that offense. I think he's the perfect match for the job. He's got a young, energetic staff. I will ask or tell the UK folks, I'm not sure, there's not many identifiers as far as blue or red in here, so I don't know who I'm talking to.
Mainly UK, I think. Well, I don't know, about 50-50 probably.
Coach Stoops inherited a roster that needs a lot of work.
Yeah.
Realistically, the excitement is great, the recruiting is higher than it's ever been, but it's going to take a year or two to get players at key positions to be able to compete. And that's going to be obvious this year. I just want to see them start fast for a change. I want to see them fight back. I know that's a strange word, but I want to see them get hit back, because no matter how fancy your offense or defense is, it's still a game about physical tackling and blocking, and I want to see that fundamentals back and the toughness of several years before the air raid, Kentucky was a tough defensive team.
Oh yeah,
especially
sure.
In my day. Matter of fact, the best defenses that I went against in the SEC were Monday through Thursday.
Wow.
And you had Oliver Barnett from here in Louisville. And one thing about Coach Claiborne, I can't say enough. I mean, to say how much I admire Coach Claiborne, I wouldn't be able to fit the description. I named my son after him. If that's
Did you really? Great.
His name is Clay Maggard. So, 18 of the 22 starters off Coach Claiborne's last team that had a winning record, by the way, were from the state of Kentucky.
Yeah.
And that meant something special. And I don't think that you have to have all starters from Kentucky, but it helps to have people that have grown up loving the University of Kentucky. But I think Coach Stoops is going to really get into Ohio, Kentucky, and the rest of the country and recruit. And his big thing is, and I truly believe you have to recruit and develop, but they're a couple years away.
Coach Claiborne really recruited heavily in the Louisville area, and he recruited the Catholic high schools, St. X and Trinity, but it seemed like Joker Phillips didn't do that. I mean, we've had some great football players here in Louisville the last couple of years, and Kentucky just seemed like they weren't much of a presence.
I read something today, it was interesting, you said that, about Jason Hatcher, who went from Trinity, that went to UK, and it said, and then on a strange turn, UK got a player from Trinity. I'm thinking my day was all Trinity and St. X.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, on travel days, not only was it the first time most of us had ever seen an airplane, let alone been in one, we had to find a Trinity or St. X guy to tie our ties for us. So I love the Catholic school guys. I mean, you'd see Miners and Andy Murray and those guys, and there'd be a line of 10 people outside their room coming out with ties. But no, the tradition of Catholic sports in Louisville was something I followed since my playing days, growing up in Cumberland. The tradition of not only Trinity and St. X, but Holy Cross, DeSales. It was UK. We had a lot of players from those schools.
Did you tie your own tie?
Today I did. That's why it's not very good. They only taught me the half thing. I can't do a whole, you know.
I'm not sure if that's a great commentary about Catholic education or a very poor commentary about public education.
Well, yeah.
Some of you all, the menus, and I want to really thank Adam Lee and his people for coming up with that really clever, cute menu. Thank you so much for that. But up there in the corner, I think, we were talking about Coach Bryant. You will see a picture of me eavesdropping on a conversation between Coach Bryant and Coach Charlie McClendon of LSU after the LSU-Alabama game in 1979. And the reason that game is important, that was the first football game televised by this maverick outfit called ESPN. I can remember in the press room they had press releases out, and I'm thinking, what in the world is this? And of course, you know, back in '79, not a lot of us had cable TV, or we were just in the process of getting it. And I just thought, this thing's never going to work. This is ridiculous. Well, ESPN pretty much runs the sports world these days.
That company did okay.
Yeah, they did okay.
I believe they made it.
Freddie, do you have any kind of a prediction on the game Saturday? I know you'll be there. Won't you?
I will be there,
Okay.
yes. It's going to be a challenge for UK. I mean,
That's the understatement.
that's the understatement. I mean, I'm going to be completely honest. It's going to be challenging because I do think that Louisville has a very special quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater, not only on the field but off. You know, I would like in today's environment to see more of Teddy Bridgewater and less of Johnny Football. Because I believe Teddy Bridgewater stands for what's right as an elite player on the field and off. I'm anxious to watch him throw the ball and see how Louisville plays, but I'm also very excited to see how UK goes against that. Defensively, they're young, very young in the back seven, which could be not a good combination. But I think UK will move the ball a little bit. As far as the game score, you know, I'm not so concerned, even as a former captain and player and a fan. I mean, I identify myself as a fan. I'm more concerned of what UK does Monday through Thursday and what they do on Saturday, because they have so much improvement to do developing the talent they have now. It will work out in the games eventually. I think next year and maybe the year after that, you're going to see an even matchup between the two schools finally. And this rivalry needs both these teams to be good. Kentucky needs both these teams to be good to keep football relevant in the state, because we all know we fight an uphill battle with the competing sports every now and then. So I think we need both of them to be good, relevant in the national scene and the regional scene, and keep this rivalry going.
Louisville fans I've talked to, their second favorite team this year is Florida. And the reason for that is that if Florida does well, then they won't fire Muschamp, the coach, because the theory is that he'll get fired if they continue to lose, and they will come after Charlie Strong, and that would be probably the one job that Charlie would leave Louisville to take, would be the Florida job.
Coach Strong's done a really good job here. He's a good man. And he's been the right person at the right time for that job. He's recruited well. You know, if Florida does come open, that would be an interesting issue, being he was there so long. But I think the community of Louisville has really accepted him, and you know, he's done a great job. But as far as UK, I think Coach Stoops is going to do an equally as good a job, given time, and given time to develop that roster. You know me, I'm a rather busy guy. I don't have time to watch a lot of stuff, and one of my few hobbies I have, and it benefits not sleeping much like I do, is I look at the different major football powers and what you really need to look at is roster development. And if you look at roster development, the first places you look at is offensive, defensive line. In the SEC, I mean, you know, and I joked with a friend of mine, Jake McKinney, who should be here later. He's the guy that put the Beat UK sticker on my office today. So yeah, everybody boo him when he gets in here. You know, we're talking about roster development. When Kentucky finishes the Governor's Cup, they get rewarded by playing Florida. After that, they get rewarded by playing South Carolina. And then this little team from Tuscaloosa comes rolling to town who, you know, I've heard from my friends in Alabama, this could be Saban's best team if that offensive line comes around. So
that's scary.
It is, and it's just challenge after challenge after challenge. That's why I say I'm very optimistic on what happens Monday through Thursday to develop that talent, because the games could be, some games could have a competitive advantage for the opposite team.
Freddie, one last thing, and then we'll take some questions if anybody has any. I was disappointed in Kentucky's first game. I had bought into the concept that the air raid was back. They were going to be out throwing the ball, and then they start the kid who's really more of an option quarterback. Do they have to commit to the air raid to be successful?
I think they do. I think UK is, with the current situation within the SEC, we tried to run the traditional offenses and compete with Alabama and LSU, but there's only two schools that get those kind of players, and that's Alabama and LSU. I think offensively, I don't like calling it a gimmick, but we have to do something different, and the pace of the game is something different that I think Neil Brown is really good at. That's why I'm interested Saturday. If Kentucky can run 75, 80 plays, I think the game's going to be close, because you're not going to allow the substitutions, there's going to be fatigue involved. And it also keeps Teddy Bridgewater on the sideline, which is the best defensive move Kentucky can make. So I do think it has to be, Kentucky cannot sustain winning by running a traditional offense. It has to be an air raid type system that keeps the defense off balance, keeps them guessing.
Yeah. Okay, any questions anybody has for Freddie Maggard? Anybody?
Yes, more common sense for the UK.
I think that was a backhanded compliment from Mike Polio.
Well, that's nicer welcome than I thought I was going to get. If it wasn't for Billy Reed, I would have never came here tonight, because I thought I was going to walk into beer bottles being thrown at me and getting booed. And
Freddie, I'm just like one of your offensive linemen. I'll always protect you.
I was picturing that scene from Roadhouse when they were throwing it.
Anything else any questions for Freddie? Anything at all? Anybody? Okay, Freddie, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you coming out. And if anybody thinks of a question for Freddie while he's still here with us, just feel free to ask that at any time. One item of business here, Steve, did you bring the petition?
We did get the petition put together for the next one.
Okay, what I want to do is, and I think both UK and UofL fans will agree with this, Coach Howard Schnellenberger is currently ineligible for the College Football Hall of Fame, because they have a rule that if you're a coach, you had to have won at least 60% of your games to be eligible. As a result of that, they're inducting a lot of guys who aren't nearly the football guy that Howard Schnellenberger is, who built 3 programs, won a national championship with one of them, took another one to the Fiesta Bowl. And to me, that's just one of those silly rules, but it bothers me, because Howard Schnellenberger should be in the College Football Hall of Fame. So we're going to prepare a petition at Catholic Sports Network. We'll have it here for our next meeting. And then at the end of the football season, we'll get UPS to send that to the College Football Hall of Fame, just to let them know that we think Howard Schnellenberger, they either need to change the rules or make an exception, because here's one of the most respected, successful football people ever, probably. So we'll do that then for at our next meeting. Okay, our next guest. I'm always reluctant to give the microphone to this guy, because I may never see it again. But another former UK quarterback from St. Xavier High School, Paul Karam. And Paul, come on up, Paul. has a special story he would like to tell us, and he also has a special guest that he would like to introduce.
Well, first of all, is this working? Turn it on.
First of all, thank you, Bill. I'd like to tell you a story about, well, first of all, in spite of Mr. Polio's comments, which kind of made me not want to tell this story, I'll tell you the difference between UofK and UofL fans right now. A couple years ago, my beautiful wife and I and Claudia Driesbach were at a UofK Auburn football game. Claudia had a date with Dave Hall, a former UofL basketball player. It's about halfway through the third quarter, and behind us we keep hearing this guy yelling, "Wyatt! Wyatt!" And after about 3 or 4 times, Dave Hall turned to me and said, "Who in the hell is Wyatt?" And with that, the other side of the stadium said, "Blue! Wyatt! Blue!" So that's the difference.
That's bad, Freddie. He's one of your own guys, too.
That's all I'm proud of. Fred, great job. I want to tell you about something a lot more unfair than what you just heard about Coach Snellenberg, if I can get it out. A couple of months ago, I was watching ESPN or HBO. The special was an hour-long sports special. The title of it was The Color Orange, a takeoff on The Color Purple. And the story, The Color Orange, was about Conridge Holloway, who was the first black quarterback in the SEC, played for the University of Tennessee. And I watched it. He did remarkable, and it's a remarkable story. And then 2 or 3 nights later, a 30 for 30 special comes on HBO or ESPN. I can't remember which one was which. And it's about Sylvester Croom, the first black coach in the SEC. And it's a remarkable story. And what I'm about to tell you is not in any way to diminish their accomplishments. I think you all know that. But I thought to myself, if my teammate, Wilbur Hackett, saw these shows, I would be afraid that he would get sick to the point of throwing up. But he would never say anything about it, because I and my teammates played with the first black football players, the first black athletes of any sport in the Southeastern Conference, 5 years before Conridge Holloway played for Tennessee. When Sylvester Croom went to Mississippi State, he probably had 15 African Americans starting for him on defense. But I understand it, and it's a great accomplishment, and that's not what I'm here to talk about. What I'm here to talk about is, despite the aspersions that have been cast toward UofK, Adolph Rupp, the dream game between Texas Western, which my dear friend Tom Cron played in, Hollywood's kind of taken that story and run with it. In spite of all this, the groundbreakers in the Southeastern Conference and the barrier breakers was the University of Kentucky. One of our teammates, Nat Northington, who was the first black athlete to play in the SEC football game, recently came out with a book. Still Running is the name of the book. 2 articles are cited in that book. One was in the 2007 Florida Times-Union. The name of that article was 5 players that helped to shape, 5 men that helped to shape the SEC. Those 5 men, I can't remember the 5th one, but 4 of them were Roy Kramer, Bear Bryant, Herschel Walker, and Nat Northington. Our player from the University of Kentucky. In 2013, this year, is it? Am I doing this right? It's going. And breathe it too hard. Well, I'm wound up. Polio. One of these guys is going to take him out. In 2013, the Bleacher Report, title of the article, 10 college football players that deserve a statue. And one of them was Nat Northington. Nat Northington, Greg Page, our teammate who broke his neck in practice and died, Wilbur Hackett and Houston Hall were the first. Wilbur and Houston were the first to go through all 4 years, and Wilbur Hackett in spite of his off-the-field endeavors and his behavior around the campus, was our team captain his junior and senior year.
Wilbur, you're going to get a chance to rebut all this. And by the way, what Houston Hogg from Hazard?
Yeah.
Freddie Maggar's? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll tell you the rest about Houston Hogg after the event. Right, Hackett?
Exactly.
So, in spite of these marvelous accomplishments, the University of Kentucky has not given these men the proper recognition. The reason those two shows, those two specials got on television is because the University of Tennessee and Mississippi State University were behind it. If they weren't, those things wouldn't have happened. Now, the two pieces of this are, this is not only an enormously overlooked honor, a tremendous accomplishment, and these men deserve the proper recognition. That's number one. Number two, not to be disingenuous about it, this is an enormous PR opportunity for the University of Football, Kentucky football program. Tomorrow night at an all Charlie Bradshaw reunion, I'm going to dress my teammates and we're going to sign a petition to get a statue built outside the stadium of each one of them in conjunction with the $110 million stadium renovation. So the movement is underway, and we're going to get this done. I told Coach Stoops when I met with him, I gave him the whole history of this thing. He never heard of any of these guys, and God bless him. I mean, he's concentrating on football. I said, Coach, if we can't get this done, we've been trying to get this done for 15 years. We'll raise the money ourselves and put the statues in front of the caveman's house. He's all for it. Neil Brown's all for it. 3 or 4 members of the Board of Trustees that I've met with are all for it. Billy Reed and Mike Pratt and the like have got us lined up with media people from here to Jim Porter's. And we're going to get this thing done. One final comment. Segregation in the South. Militia and military couldn't do it. Government programs couldn't do it. Social engineering couldn't do it. Buses couldn't do it. Football did it as much as anything. And that man right there and our other teammates were at the forefront of that happening. So I want to introduce my teammate and team captain, Wilbur Hackett. And let me just say this, please don't ask me about any of Wilbur's escapades off the field in Lexington, Kentucky.
Come on up, Wilbur. I am really excited that Paul is doing this. Over the years, Kentucky, the University of Kentucky has gotten this bad rap as some kind of a racist institution, and it's mainly because Coach Rupp, in my opinion, has been really unfairly portrayed. I mean, the facts do not support what his detractors would have you believe. And they have the perfect argument or the perfect counterbalance to those kinds of comments, and that is that Kentucky was the leader in football integration. Nat Northington signed in the spring, I think, Wilbur, of 1965. He and Greg, and then you came along the next year, is that right? So this is really something that the University of Kentucky should be proud of. They should wrap their arms around it. They should embrace it. And I think it would do a world of good in terms of negating this unfair negative publicity that they've had all these years. Now, Wilbur, you probably don't know this. You and I have one thing in common, and that is that I went to Manual for a year.
I didn't know.
I did. I went to Manual in the, well, I was in the 7th grade at Manual. This is back in the day when Manual's senior high and junior high were both in the same building. And I was elected as the 7th grade representative to the student council. The 8th grade representative was a guy that went on to a modest career in politics named Mitch McConnell. But to this day, and if prompted I will do this, of all the I've ever been been to, the only one I can remember the words to the fight song is Manual. And I will sing Stand Up and Cheer if prompted or goaded enough. But you did go to Manual, Wilbur, and you were a great football player there. When I've talked with guys like Wes Unseld and Butch Beard about why they didn't integrate the UK basketball program, they basically said, well, look at what was going on in the Deep South at that time. We didn't want to go down to Mississippi and play because they were killing black people then. The Ku Klux Klan was running amok. What made you decide that you wanted to go play in the Southeastern Conference?
Well, that's a pretty long story. First of all, I want to thank my friend Paul Karen, who, as you can tell, once he gets his mind set on something, he's pretty determined. Anybody knows Paul knows that and I can't say enough about our friendship. And he is truly been a friend to me for a long time. But to tell you why I went to UK, first of all, at the table we were talking about Michigan State. That was my first choice. I want to say that.
That's where Sherman Lewis has gone.
Sherman Lewis, who was Emmanuel All-American. And but I was born in Winchester, Kentucky, so I'm sort of Eastern Kentucky, like.
Well, hell, I'm from Mount Sterling. Man, we are close. That's
what I said. But I was born in Winchester. My dad used to talk about you all the time, being from Mount Sterling.
Yeah.
And that's. Freddie talks about his mother. I want to talk about my dad because he's been a UK fan, and that's where the story starts. I was born in Winchester, lived there from 1949 to 55. And while in Winchester, my father worked for this company called Pound Tire Company, which is down on Main Street in Winchester. Yeah. And during football season, this football was really big. Of course, you know, Bert Brown was the coach. My dad on Saturdays would be responsible for the company, for the business, and the owners, and therefore all of them would take off and go to the football games at UK. So my dad, and this is pre-1955 before we moved to Louisville, my dad told me, and I found this out later, my dad told them, one time he told me, he said, one of these days, I'll be going to UK football games. Now this is 1953, 54. Wow. So when I was getting recruited, my first choice, like I said, was Michigan State. The second choice was Indiana University. I went to Notre Dame, and I thought about Western Kentucky, some of the small schools. And I had decided to go to Michigan State. Little did I know that the decision had already been made. I was going to UK, and that was based on the statement that my dad made back in 1953 or 54. Wow. So all the child took many trips to different schools, but when it came down to signing, and I was going to sign with Michigan State, my dad convinced me, and I can't go through how he convinced me, but he told me pretty much, you're going to UK. So that's how I ended up in the UK. My dad had been a UK fan all his life, even back in the 40s, when you couldn't even watch football on TV. When I first was when I first was associated with college football, it was over the radio, because we didn't have a TV.
Yeah.
So my dad was always a UK fan, so in 1966 or 67, when it came time to sign, UK was it. I didn't know it, but UK was the place that I was going to go, and ended up signing with UK in 67. And I have no regrets.
What was your experience like, both on campus and when the team went on the road to play?
It was different. You know, when you're a young 18, 19-year-old young man, all I wanted to do was no, Paul.
Paul, you had the microphone. Paul, sit down, Paul. Out of order.
I want to say something that's critical to this. In 1968, my freshman year, Wilbur's sophomore year, we played Ole Miss in Jackson. We played in Jackson, Mississippi, in 1968 football game with 60,000 people in the stands. And unless I'm wrong, Houston, Wilbur, I'm counting the guys selling peanuts and Cokes. And Wilbur's dad was the only black people in the stadium. And the state troopers were not nice to him. Verbally, if you can get like this.
Okay, and that And that's true. As a matter of fact, before the game, we missed the bus to go to the state, to go to
You
the
didn't miss the
airport.
bus, you just didn't get on.
We just didn't go.
Let's put this in context though. This was 1968.
Yeah.
This is only 6 years after James Meredith integrated the University of Mississippi, where they had to call out the National Guard, and there was at least one death in the riots they had on campus. It's only 5 years after George Wallace stood in the door of Foster Auditorium in Alabama and said, "Segregation forever." So this is still fresh. I mean, this attitude in the Old South is still prevalent there.
It was, but it's like anything else. As a young 19-year-old, we have teammates like Paul and Jeff Van Noe, Kerry Sheahead, who was my roommate. You just kind of put it in the back of your mind, and you go on and do what you know you have to do. I was there to get an education, to go to school, to play football, and that's what I did. All those other distractions kind of put behind me and enjoyed what I was doing. So, and my teammates were very supportive. So that pretty much eliminated a lot of the frustration and some of the problems that we had with the regulation.
Wilbur, I think I can speak for everybody here. We certainly admire you and thank you for doing what you did, and we're all behind Paul's effort. Yes, Paul?
Now, we're gonna get this statute thing done, right? I
Yes.
think it'd be appropriate, Wilbur, if you don't mind, if you could just say a word or two about, I think Wes Unson's parents asked Coach Rupp if he could guarantee their safety, and he said, "No, I can't." If he could guarantee Wes Unson's safety, he said, "No, I can't." Didn't your parents ask Charlie Bradshaw the same question?
That was part of the reason I went to UK. Coach Bradshaw made that commitment that I would take care of your son. And by the way, you mentioned Butch Beard, who is actually my cousin. He married my first cousin, and I've been a Butch Beard fan. And Butch and I have talked about why he didn't go to UK. He didn't feel like that they were really sincere in recruiting. Or yet they talked to him, but I think the feeling he had was that, yeah, you're talking to me, but you don't really want me to come, and so consequently he went to UofL. But I think the thing that made my parents feel good about UK was the fact that Coach Bradshaw, he sat in our living room and committed that I would take care of your son. Now, all the other things, and by the way, things that Paul Paul's talking about, I'm just glad we didn't have ESPN, because now they know everything. If they knew some of the things that we did, then we probably might still be serving time.
There's one more unfair thing going on that I want to use Billy to help us in the meeting get worked out. Hook mentioned Kerry Sheahead earlier, and I think at the appropriate time there should be a statue of Kerry Sheahead and myself outside the stadium for being the first Lebanese players.
As we were saying, well, speaking of ESPN, Wilbur went on to a very distinguished career as an official, and he still is an official in the booth, not on the field, but in the booth. But there was a call a few years ago that I think was run repeatedly on ESPN that you were involved in. Tell them about that.
You're not talking about Steven Garcia.
I'm afraid so.
Okay, then. So you want?
Go ahead, please.
Okay, so as an official, and I'm sure we have many football fans here. An official is part of the field, and a lot of times officials are run over by the players, and these players are massive. So anyway, in 2008 of October, I had the LSU South Carolina game in South Carolina. Prior to the game, in the first quarter, I pride myself in not getting knocked down. And that's what I mean, if you watch football, you'll see that these guys get hit all the time, and sometimes it ends an official's career. Well, I got pushed down by a player who it didn't really have to, so I had a kind of an attitude, to say the least. But at any rate, I was pretty much made up my mind that I always protect myself. So when I saw Steven Garcia coming toward me, I sort of, I guess, was a little more aggressive than I should have been. So I guess I thought about just protecting myself. So I did kind of forearm him and but that's just the beginning. But it gets worse. So I tried to play it off. To tell you the truth, I just played off like that didn't just happen, but it did. So I just kept moving on, and then of course that night after the game, everybody was teasing. My fellow officials they were teasing me and talking to me about that shit. I was taunting because I stood up over him, so they were making all kinds of.
Did you tell me?
No, I didn't.
Oh.
But anyway, so I started watching it on ESPN, and so I was sitting there with my son who was there, and his phone was ringing off the hook. So I was watching ESPN, and we were drinking a couple beers, and so it seems like the more beer I drank, the worse it got. So I knew then I had to call my supervisor, who was Rogers Redding. By the way, Rogers Redding is from Georgetown, Kentucky. He's the supervisor of officials. And so instead of him calling me, I called him and I explained to him that I was merely protecting myself. It was instinct, and he said, "Well, Wilbur, that's what I thought. I need to hear your story because the SEC phone was ringing off good." And the thing that I think that really saved me was the fact that I did make a comment. Is a lot of times you make comments. If you comment on a situation, it always gets taken out of context. A lot of times you say one thing and the media will report another. But my phone for 2 weeks rang off the hook. ESPN, CBS, New York, Access Hollywood, everyone wanted to interview me. But I said, no, I'm not going to do it. Not like this. And then one day I was watching CNN on 34th, CNN, and the ticker tape on the bottom of the TV said, Wilbur Hackett will not be disciplined for his hit on Garcia. I said, what's that going on CNN? Anyway, it was just one of those things that it was instinct. A lot of people, especially in the South, they thought that I purposely, and if you look at it, it looks like I did purposely hit it. And that's what I tell anybody. Yes, I did do it on purpose. I did it to protect myself. So that's my story.
I would say running 12 feet at the quarterback and elbowing him in the jaw would be protected.
Speaking of protecting yourself, anytime, and I'm not saying this is the case here, but anytime you hear a guy say that his quote was taken out of context, you can count on 1, he said it, B, he regrets it, and C, he's going to blame the media guy.
Yeah, it does happen sometimes.
Now, just one question about now you're going to be, you have a game Saturday, you're going to be upstairs. Does that mean you're in charge of the replays?
Well, no, actually, there's a replay official and a communicator observer. And my job, the replay official is the official who actually reviews the replay and makes sure that the final decision. All I do is assist him and I observe the officials and grade them and give them feedback.
Now, the late Tommy Bell, who you probably met when you were up at UK, NFL official. Tommy was the head referee in the Joe Namath Super Bowl III. He was always opposed to any kind of replay. He said that the officiating errors included were part of the game. That was integral to the game, and basically, since the officials got it right most of the time, that you shouldn't have replay. Right. But it looks like most sports now, as in baseball, football, people are wanting more replay. What is your feeling about the use of replay in football?
I think the main thing is to get the call right, is to keep it fair and to make sure that the call is given the proper attention and it's gotten right. Without replay, we couldn't do that. a lot of people were opposed to replay, but if you look at the athleticism of these athletes, the game has changed so much. There's so much involved. And whereas when we came along back in the 60s, it was a sport, it was a game, and now it's just big business. There's too much involved, too much money involved. When you talk about bowl games, the income, the money involved in these games, the revenue, then it's very important that the right team, that the right call is made. So replay has made it so those plays are gotten right, and it's very important. So everyone's going to it, and it's the speed of the game that these athletes are so fast that you can't get it in real time. You can't get it right in real time because it happens so fast. So replay is an integral part of the game. It needs to be there, and it's really helped the game tremendously.
What about that NBA official a couple of years ago that admitted he was betting on games and all that? Did that just shock you that the guy would do something like that?
Well, as an official, yes. I mean, because you're compensated well. I don't understand that mentality anyway. This is a lot of people ask me, well, could you do a UofK game? And I say, yeah, but I mean, the fans don't like it. But yeah, I could do a UofK game because when I go on the field, I don't care who's playing. All I care is that I officiate and keep the integrity of the game where it's supposed to be. I could call a UofK game. Of course, every call I made, Paul and everybody else would think it's the wrong call. So that would prevent me from doing it. But the main thing is to get the call right, and it doesn't surprise me, even though it disappoints me that an official will bet. But one of the things that they asked us at the beginning of the season, we have to take do a background check. And one thing they asked us is, have you ever been approached? And I've been very fortunate. In my 25 years, I've never been approached by anyone.
Now, wait a minute. Just right before we started tonight, I saw Paul Carroll over here reaching into his pocket and pulling out a wad of bills.
But you got to understand who that is.
Oh, well, you got that right. I understand. Okay.
No, but it does happen. Again, I've been very fortunate that I've never been approached, but officials are, in some instances, are approached by persons who want to influence the game. So.
Anybody have any questions for Wilbur Hackett? Freddie Maggard.
Sorry. First of all, I met you first time at the captain's breakfast 2 years ago. And I saw you play against South Carolina. As a former captain and player, I want to say I'm sorry that I had never heard your story before. And I think that is a bad thing from the University of Kentucky. That needs to be changed. I will tell you this. Before he told me anything about the project, I stood up and walked around. You want to tell the rest of the story because you speak a lot better than I do.
I walked in here and I told Freddie that Wilbur Hackett was going to come here. He immediately mentioned the special that I was referred to by Congress Holloway, that he was steaming because the University of Kentucky had done something like that. And I said, wait a minute, let me tell you what I'm going to talk about. So he speaks for there's a curious thing about former University of Kentucky football players, Freddie, myself, whatever era, with the exception, I guess, of Barry Burnett's era. We all had a tough time. Charlie Bradshaw, the next guy they brought in after Charlie Bradshaw, who of course was a former star of Stage and Screen, Ethel Merman, before she had her sex change operation, became John Ray.
He's not bitter.
No, he's not.
Anyway, it takes a while because we haven't gone to the Sugar Bowl 10 years in a row. It takes a while to come back to the bowl. It takes a while to come back. Plus, Freddie, I'm sorry if I'm talking out of school here, you tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, they're running out of, Kentucky basketball is wonderful, wonderful tradition, the premier college basketball program in the country, but they're running out of buildings to name after basketball players. They've got C.M. Newton's name on the football field. I'm sorry if I'm getting in the wrong lane here. Coach Rupp's name, as it should be, is on the basketball arena. Cliff Hayden's name is on the baseball arena. He didn't play baseball, he played basketball. Harry Lancaster, the basketball coach, his name is on the swimming pool, the natatorium. Terry Lancaster had one leg, he couldn't swim. It's time for the football players to get some due, and what I'm gonna tell my teammates tomorrow night is, it takes us a while to come back. It takes us a while to get over things and get involved. Anybody knows anything about football, they knows that you put your heart, soul, guts, and body into it. It doesn't work, it's tough. Let me finish, Billy. So, it takes a while to come back.
Burgers with Paul. Yeah. Welcome to Burgers with Paul.
It takes a while to come back, but this is our time to come back and do something and get credit for something that is profound. I watched the movie, I don't mean to be disrespectful, I watched the movie about Jackie Robinson, it's a remarkable movie. And what a remarkable man. I don't think you ever played baseball in Mississippi. This man played football in Mississippi in 1968, and there was 3 black people, including fans, in the stadium. It's our time to tell our story.
Well, I think it's historical, and when I saw the young guys walk in, and y'all were supposed to boo him. For putting the BUK sign, that's what I thought. I think it's historical that I would like my children to read not only the sports, but as a personal testament of you. So I'm fully supportive of this. My class that I was a team captain, I will guarantee you will be fully supportive. So thank you for everything. And I do have one question. Can you explain to me, in layman terms, the new targeting and spearing and all that? Yeah. And do you feel as an official that there's an element of toughness being taken away from the quarterback rules and all that in football?
Well, yeah, that is something that's pretty much been coming for a good while. The safety aspect of football, is you know, we mentioned Greg Page. I probably should have mentioned them first. Those 2 gentlemen were one of the reasons that I went. Of course, Greg died because of a safety issue. I mean, lowered his head and broke his spine. Injured his spine and then became paralyzed. But I think the targeting thing is just to increase the safety part of football. On the other hand, to be honest with you, I don't like it. I don't like it because it gives officials too much authority to remove a guy from a football game, especially in the critical situations. And as an official, I'm going to sit here and tell you, we're not perfect. And that's why we need replay. I know when I make a call that's probably questionable, or I know when I haven't had a good game. I think targeting is good as it relates to increasing the safety aspect, but again, I think we're taking the toughness, just like Freddie said. When I played and I played 4 years. I never missed a practice, or I never missed a game, and I was very fortunate. But it was because of the toughness that was in me, and that we all had. I mean, back in the old school days, they used to talk about guys, football players running through the wall, and then pretty much that's old school. And now I see these guys running around here with they got water fountains on the field. You know how we got water back in the day? I mean, seriously, it's changing. You know how we got water when I was in high school? We had a towel we put in a bucket, and we stuck the towel in the bucket, and we all sucked the water out of the towel to get water. I'm serious. That's how we. And everybody, and you talking about grass and dirt. I'm old school. But anyway, so to your point, Freddie, yes, I think it's and maybe I may get in trouble for telling how I feel, but I think it's taking a little bit of the toughness out, and also it gives officials too much authority to remove a player from the game. And a lot of times they're removed from the game, and I've seen it already, and they shouldn't have been taken out of the game. So to your point, I agree. I think we going a little bit too far as far as giving officials that authority.
Thank you.
Well, Paul, this is a wonderful idea. It is an idea whose time has come, and when you make your proposal to Mr. Barnhart, I certainly don't want you to make any kind of threats, but I think I can promise you that if they don't go for this, I will personally orchestrate a media campaign that will make them regret that they did. It really is, and thank you for bringing Wilbur here tonight, and thank you, Wilbur. Wilbur Hackett.
We didn't hear about your Saturday prediction.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, we need a and Mr. Kieran gave you his Saturday prediction.
I didn't either. Well, I'm a fan first, and I kind of agree with Freddie. I mean, I do agree with him. We are. I mean, you know when you're outmanned. We don't have Teddy Bridgewater. We don't have Devontae Parker. I mean, Louisville has, and we're not ranked number 6 in the country. We know we're outmanned. It's going to be an uphill battle. But what I want to see UofK play with some fight, with some toughness. I want to see them go in there and not quit and not give up, which I've seen in the past. I just want them to give it all they have. A lot of times the teams with the best talent doesn't always win. I want to see us play well. I want to show some toughness and make it a ball game. I think certainly Louisville has the edge and the advantage, but you know you got to play the game. So we'll see what happens.
Well, you didn't answer the question. You sound like
what is my
A prediction.
Prediction.
I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be.
Now, as we close our first session of Burgers with Billy, wait a minute. Okay, Bill Muscle.
You didn't ask the question, just Karen, you asked about it.
Yeah, we want to hear.
I was trying to avoid that.
Well, I do have a question, Mr. Karen.
Yes.
And Mr. Karen, now the University of Kentucky has raised their athletic budget to exceed the University of Louisville finally. And in that new budget of $109 million, is there going to be enough money left over, since Calipari will take most of it, to pay the same fees the other SEC teams are paying their athletes? I hope so.
Thank you, Paul, very much. Now,
Maybe you and Mike Holyoke can go over the greatest.
to close up the first Burgers with, yeah, Wilbur,
Can I say one more thing?
please.
You know, I'm not anti-basketball, and you know, but I've been wanting the University of Kentucky to support football for a long time. And I'm not anti-Calipari or basketball, but you can't, and I've said it for a long time, you cannot be in the SEC and not play football. When I lived in Tupelo, Mississippi for 18 months, and all I heard for 12 months, 24/7, was football. We're the only school that goes crazy over basketball, which is okay. But I mean, if you're gonna be in the SEC, you got to play football. And if you look at the income, the revenue that's generated by football, you will support. So we need to have a football team. It's about time that we started putting some emphasis and revenue into the football program.
Thanks, Wilbur.
Thank you.
Mike Polio has a story about the Governor's Cup. And while Mike's coming up here, look, I love all you guys dearly, all my UK friends, but look, I gotta call it like it is, guys. I think the Cards are 5 touchdowns better. I'm sorry. I just don't see it being a close game. I hope I'm wrong. But this Louisville team is not ranked number 7 in the nation for nothing. And this all of a sudden, the Kentucky game now is maybe the biggest game on their schedule. That's how bad their schedule is. But I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's a really competitive game, but it's hard for me to see it. But then I didn't see North Carolina State beating Houston in the '83 NCAA championship game either. And if they played again today, I'd still pick Houston, even though I know they lost. Anyhow, Mike Polio has a story. Mike, by the way, former coach he had a coaching staff at Virginia Commonwealth, Wilbur, where his assistant coaches were Scott Davenport, Tubby Smith, and Ray Harper, who's now the head coach at Western. So Mike, tell us your Governor's Cup story.
Well, real quick though, I want to tell you, I coached at Manual right after Wilbur had left, and I made my cuts, and Butch Charmoli calls me in and said, "You're fired." I said, "Fired? I haven't played a game yet." Said, "You cut a Hackett." We don't cut. You know who Wilbur Hackett is? It's his brother. Our cousin, I'm not sure which one. I cut his brother from the basketball team, and it never dawned on me it was his brother. Thank you. was trying to explain that to Sharmoli, but Sherman Lewis and what a legacy Manuel had back then. And then, well, Paul at St. X, that year we got to the finals, and I think, were you 68? Were you already gone, or were you on the team? But we lost to them in the finals of the region that year, and they went on to the state champ tournament. Real quick, when you see the trophy this year, I want to tell you how it got there. We decided we needed UofK UofL trophy. So I wrote out to Kroger. Kroger has the flyers and the Derby, and I thought, well, they'd be interested. So I made a deal with them, and they said, we'd love to do it. They gave both schools $100,000 to do this, $10,000 a year for 10 years, and they would put a trophy together. So we sat and we said, okay, what represents Kentucky? Well, there's already a bourbon barrel, there's already a tobacco bowl, there, a horse. I don't know, we give each other a horse and you sign it. So we decided there's a guy in Eastern Kentucky that and this is not a happy story. There's a guy in Eastern Kentucky that makes a Daniel Boone rifle exactly the way Daniel Boone would make it. No screws, none of that. Cost $18,000. But it's the settling of Kentucky, the frontier, and we decided to do it. 2 weeks later, in the middle of the night, I wake up and think, oh my God, it's a gun. And I'm driving out to Kroger, literally crying. I've cost Kentucky $100,000. I've cost Louisville, and back then that was a lot of money. And I'm crying. I'm thinking I just screwed up horribly. So I get there, and Ben Harper said, I had a dream last night that it's a gun. And I said, we can't do it. He said, you're absolutely right. The best trophy place in the United States is in New Albany, Indiana. It's Bruce Fox. And it's a trophy manufacturing company. If you look at the national championship, you get a crystal, the football, and the holding has been made by, in fact, you can go, they send it to Bruce Fox, and they make the Indianapolis 500 and everything. So we had a trophy made. On August the 5th, I believe, on a Monday, we were to have the press conference. And by the way, with 2 weeks to go, we had the trophy, and one of the guys dropped it. So they had to come back and iron it out. And but have you seen the trophy? So on that Saturday, tragically, a UofK player was killed by a sniper. If you remember,
Trent DeJurio.
Trent DeJurio was killed. God rest his soul. And can you imagine on that press conference on Monday putting up a gun and saying that's, I mean, you talk about dodging a bullet in the sense that we'd have thrown it away. I mean, that gun would have been gone and we would have had no trophy. So when you see that trophy, it was a matter of luck and tragedy, and it's a shameful thing. But my wife went to UofK, and I went to Stolefield my whole career watching you guys play, and I love Kentucky. But then my check was signed by UofL. I became a real big UofL fan. I'll tell you that much. But I wanted to tell you all, when you look at that, whoever holds that trophy up, and I think it's a dangerous, dangerous game for Louisville. Louisville has nothing to gain, everything to lose. Kentucky has everything to gain and nothing to lose. When you're a 14-point underdog, it's a scary position to be in.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is coach speak. Coach speak, right there.
It would scare me to death.
Charlie Strong couldn't have said it better.
If he's not nervous, there's something wrong, because like you say, you got to play the game.
I want to thank all y'all for being here. Your names are committed to memory, and when people are lined up out there waiting to get into these things, you all will go right to the front of the line. There's always going to be a spot for you in these things. Our next one will be in mid-October, hopefully right before the St. X Trinity game. We'll also talk a little bit about the Breeders' Cup. But really, thank you all for coming out. And Coach Davenport came in late tonight. The Scott Davenport Show will be taped in this very room beginning, Scotty, when's the first one?
October
October 29th.
October 29th, that's a Tuesday, right? Every Tuesday
Yes.
night in this same room. And Steve Fader has worked out a new deal with Channel 3. It's going to be on Wave TV this year, so everybody at Catholic Sports is really excited about that. But thank you all so much for coming out. I hope you've had a good time. Good night, good luck.